Okay, we are now recording. So we are here at the Grenning Gallery. Let me just give you a quick walkthrough. Welcome everybody to the Grenning Gallery. You can kind of see us back there. This is our Zoom opening, or Zoom, what is it called? A meet and greet, right, Megan? A virtual meet and greet. Since the pandemic is ongoing, we are not going to have any kind of physical contact meet and greet. We are open for customers that are willing to come in and wear a mask and hand sanitize, and we've had a pretty busy summer actually. But everybody's doing the social distancing and being very safe. And what we are doing now is that we thought a Thursday night, which is traditionally an art opening night in New York City, that we would have artists zooming in from all over the world, which is what we are doing. And we are right now waiting for Melissa to zoom in. She's got kids and needs to get to bed, and it's going to be like after midnight if she zooms in at 6 our time. So we're doing a pre-recording of Melissa, which will be spliced in. But while I'm here and we're recording, I might as well show you, see if we can show you this. I don't know if you can see at an angle. It's raining out, but this is the painting in the window. This is the work of Adam Straus, and Adam Straus will be joining us later, and we'll talk about that. His painting is garnering a lot of attention. People are coming in because number one, it's a beautiful image. Number two, it's incredibly well done. And number three, global warming is an issue right now. It is indisputed. I just saw in the news last night over 4 million acres have burned this year, as opposed to 250,000 last year in California alone. There is irrefutable physical evidence that we have done damage to our environment, and we need to address this as the humans occupying Earth, and America as one of the most powerful nations, or used to be at least. Anyhow, so Adam Straus is the painting in the window, and I'm going to walk over while we're waiting. I also just have to show you this. This is Patty Watwood's painting, which I have always been in love with there. It's called Feminine Flora, and she's going to talk a little bit about that later. It's just a really powerful image of a woman, and we are going to walk over now and see. We have a whole section of Melissa Sanchez. Let's just see. That's the major work. I'm trying to make it look right. Does that look good? Here, let's just start with the small one. And hey, it's a rainy day here. And guess who came in? Say hi to everybody.
Hi, how are you?
And which is your favorite of the Melissa paintings?
Oh, I love the kids. The one with the kids, absolutely.
Okay, so this is called If You Look Closer. See, and she's got Iris and Raphael under the table. My thing about this painting is, like, you've got kids, but it's the abstract composition is so wonderful. It's all of the negative space where she's painted really diligently and with a lot of attention. So, and that's hard to do when you've got two beautiful children.
I would like to know how she got her son and her daughter to play nicely together.
Yeah, that's one of those miracles.
There you go.
It was a COVID miracle, I guess. We'll find out when she zooms in.
So is that on copper?
That is on copper, and I'm going to show you this. This is a smaller painting to lift, but you can see that she paints on copper.
Yeah.
So I think that's super cool.
Wow.
And she uses the copper color to kind of, let me see if I can get this, yeah, there. She uses the copper color to come through to create that warm
And she's got
tones.
A little
Yeah,
bit of,
there's these little warm tones in here too. Cool.
Where it's that copper color?
Yeah, I think that is. She just asked, is that the absence of paint? And when some of it actually, no, this is white. I see white flecks up here, but down here in the darker areas, that looks to me like she just scraped off the paint so that the copper would glow through. Yeah,
And
really incredible.
Captures the light so beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
well, no, as usual, terrific work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Melissa, thank you for joining us. I know that you have children and teaching, and that, so we're like splicing you in. We're doing a late afternoon Zoom with Melissa alone, and we're going to hopefully mix this into the Zoom that we'll be recording later today. And we've already talked a little bit about the paintings, but I want to just take you through really quickly. Or actually, you know what, Melissa? One of the things I've been meaning to tell you is how very poignant your writing was about the experience of being in lockdown during COVID. And this show, Compte Rendu, is about a report to the king, and it's about what's going on in the kingdom. And if we believe we are in a global kingdom, you're giving us the report from Fiesole. And what I saw happening, which you don't know because you're alone in your studio, well, you and Ramiro and the children, is that all of the artists, when they were forced with limiting their movements, most of the painters I found were a little bit more introspective, and in some cases a little more creative. And they broke out of the mold. And I'm going to talk about that with two of your paintings in a minute. But one of the things I also saw was that you got very philosophical. And when you wrote about the work, we recorded it, and you guys can go online and look up the press release on our website. But I just want to read a little something that I think is related to this painting that I'm standing in front of, actually. And this painting is called If You Look Closer. And if you do look closer, you'll see the two kids under the table, which I think is kind of a miracle that you were able to paint such a major and important work while there are two children in the room.
And a miracle that they were playing magically underneath the table. It doesn't happen very often.
Well, actually, a client was just in and said, okay, she's talented, but how the heck did she get the kids to stay under the table?
It was easy when they didn't realize I was working. When they realized I was trying to paint them, it was a lot more complicated.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so anyhow, when we were all of these works, and I'll go through them in a second, but I'm just going to read quickly a couple sentences, which I think is important for all of the classical realists. One of the big issues is, what are we painting and why? Not now that we know how to paint, what are we painting and why? Yes. And you hit it, I think, or you at least raised this issue in your own way by saying, quote, I wonder about the way we see things and perceive reality. What is real? Is it what we see, what you feel, what you remember, or what you believe? Is it magical or just a deep understanding or connection with something, someplace, or someone?
Yes.
Do you
want? I think that.
Yeah.
I feel that became so important to us during quarantine, because you were living in this little bubble of time, essentially, where there was the day-to-day mundane life and the repetition of what you were doing, but there was also that life outside. There was the life in the memories of what had happened, of the family that were in another side of the world. There's so much that reality is beyond what we see. Mm-hmm. And it goes into what we feel, into what the energy that you get from somebody else. There's so many, even for example, like a scent, or like, you know how it is, like sometimes if you're walking down the street and you smell the grass, and it reminds me of a specific place and a specific time that I experienced years ago. Yeah. That the whole concept of the senses that we have, I find it very interesting, what that means in terms of reality. So with that particular painting, it stemmed from that moment of magic where the kids were underneath the table. Yeah. Where they were living, you know how kids are when they play, they're not really there in the room with you. They're in that make-believe world. Yeah. They're in whatever moment they're in. And it's a moment that usually I'm probably too busy to even notice it. Yeah. I'm so busy running around doing things, but it was during, because of that whole experience of quarantine, I felt like one of the positive things was that gift of time, that time to observe things that I don't usually get a chance to see. So that moment I saw the kids there, and also it was the sunlight. I mean, for me, you know how I'm with light. I mean, light is something that it inspires me on a technical level, but also on this kind of spiritual or emotional level. And that light that basically comes through that studio window, maybe a month or so in the year, in that specific about that I've lost my thought a second.
Okay. Well, you know what, the other thing, you know, you're saying about your senses and how you might smell something, but you recall another place and time far away. One of the things you also said about this painting is that there was a painting of one of your favorite places in the world on that table, right?
Yeah.
I'm zeroing in on it. And you said, you know, the interesting thing is when you see that painting, it's not the visual that is recalled, but actually the smell of the salt air is what comes up when you look at that painting. So that's that synesthesia thing where one sense recalls another.
And something with that I tried to do was to create the reflection on the table. If you look at it, that the reflection on the table isn't really a reflection of what's in the room, because, you know, it starts with a reflection of the painting, but then the sea continues.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was something I wanted to play, because sometimes, you know, the way the light falls, it just tricks you. And I started to think, you know, seeing that reflection, that little bit of purple, those blues on the table, it reminded me sort of, you as you disappear with your thoughts, you see the sea there more than you see it in the painting. And so that was, I wanted to sort of play with that, almost that magic realism in it, essentially.
Yeah, I love that. Speaking of magic, you have like these little flecks of light, you know, that are kind of in the shade, in the shadow. I don't know if you can see that with this. And then they're up there white on white. And the client was in and said, are some of those just scraping away the paint so that the copper would show through?
So no, those were mostly little touches of light, of white that I painted. But the idea came from that. What inspired that, which I think is interesting also with this concept of reality, was once lockdown was eased here, we had the opportunity to go and visit some friends. They have this little escape house in the middle of the countryside, just immersed in nature. And when we were there, the kids together, they were catching fireflies, and the stars were the most beautiful thing you'd ever see. They've had them sort of rummaging around. They became magic keys for the kids. So these elements, after that experience, then I found became part of my painting and became part of my experience. So it was going back to that play on the idea of reality. It could easily just be flecks of dust in the cat, you know, being caught by the light. Yeah. It could be the stars that I remember from that starry sky, or it could be the fireflies that my kids remember catching.
Yeah. I love that. So one of the things I was going to say is that I, you know, one of the paintings in this group, and we'll go through all of them, but one of the paintings in this group I thought was very experimental for you, and that would be this painting.
Yes.
You know, and what I have noticed is there's a pretty, you know, precise silhouette self-portrait that's backlit, and it's hanging next to your ballet slippers, which, you know, you were a ballerina, and you still are in some ways. And that's a pretty detailed, accurate portrayal of what's going on in that corner of your studio. But then when you back up and you look down, it's really just the copper you've left, and with a little indication of what would have happened in the rest of the room. And then there's those bubbles. And then I noticed when I was hanging the show that these bubbles start up again at the bottom of this painting. Yeah. And then they float right out the window. Here, see if I can get back. They float right out the window of this is the same window that's in this painting. And so together, they really kind of work as a circular unit. I don't know if you intended that, but that's what I see. And that mystical realism is so cool to me.
Yeah, I mean, the self-portrait, I think, if I'm honest, it was a little bit of therapy for me. Like, coming into my studio was this therapeutic moment where, you know, I said to Ramir, it was also just as lockdown was coming to an end, so the kids were allowed to just play outside for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
At that point. And so they would be out, and it was my moment of reflection on, you know, how I felt being inside the studio, looking out, that feeling of kind of coming out of what had been a very intense period, as we all know. And then the bubbles, they are Iris, basically. Her happy place is with the bubbles, and they're also like they're also for me were a reminder of a happiness that lasts a second, right? It's that moment and that pure living in the moment, which, you know, it's magical, and it's something that I find I'm not always so good at. I'm always looking backwards, looking forwards, looking everywhere else, but not always living in that moment. So those bubbles kind of were that little touch of living in the present, essentially.
Well, that, I mean, it was really effective, I thought. Oh, and I'm just going to quickly, here's a painting of the stars. This is called Sunlight. Let's see if we can get that. Yeah. And here's another painting. We took it down because we keep showing everybody the back of this to prove that you're painting on copper. This is the firefly painting. And then we have, that's Raphael, right?
It is Raphael.
And then we have the beautiful
interesting
moonrise.
that little rainbow that was in the window. It was the symbol of hope, but kind of the somewhat melancholic sort of thought behind that is that we painted maybe 3 of them, and they faded in the sunlight. So we put them up again, but then I took them off with great pride on the day that the kids went to summer camp.
Oh, wonderful. Well, and then there's one other painting that I just loved, and I have to say, I thought it was going to be like 40 inches. I didn't look at the size, and when it came in, it was just this precise little gem. But you know, this painting called Blessings, I thought is just fabulous. And there's actually a pretty famous owner of a restaurant who said, you know, if it was 4 feet long, I might buy it. So I'm just sticking it out there if you want to do a large one.
Good to know.
And
I think that one is spectacular. Like, great job, Melissa.
Yeah. Oh, she's there. I love this painting, and I don't know. You said that you wrote a little something about this painting, and I have to say, when I saw Blessings as the name, for me too, like being home and cooking with my family during the shutdown was found time. My mom and my daughter had never lived together before, and of course I've lived my whole childhood with my mother, and Katie's whole childhood, she lived with me. And to have all of us under one roof cooking every day will be forevermore my memory of this time.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. Out of this, there has certainly been some positive things, which I guess is good, you know. But going back to the thought of blessings, I wanted to share something with you, because the other day for an event that it was a painting live here in Florence, I'd been collecting a few thoughts about the concept of beauty and humanity. So, and it was something that was triggered from making that painting, Blessings. So if you like, I got it here, so I can read it to you if you like. Just okay. It's interesting to go back and see what's written. So I put, the ritual of disinfecting everything that enters our home has become the norm, trying to protect ourselves and our loved ones from the nightmare tearing through our communities. Yesterday, as I stood quietly in my kitchen, looking at this beautiful produce, I smiled. It led me to the question, what is the role of beauty in our lives, especially now? I think that in these difficult times, beauty is more important than ever. It cannot heal our bodies, but it can elevate our mind and our soul. It has the power to connect us and remind us of our humanity. Presence, we live, we love, and we create.
Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. And I know that if we had clients in this Zoom, well, there'd be a lot of questions, but we will, I'll be very happy to share a lot of this. And do you have any other questions or anything else you want to share, Melissa?
Not off the top of my head right now, but if any questions come up, I'm happy to answer another time, or, you know, through message if there's any questions from clients as well, or the same from you.
Okay, Megan?
Yeah.
Megan has a question.
Yeah.
So I know you're not really traveling, but like I was there a year ago, and I remember
I went down to Florence, properly into the heart of the city, a few months back, and it was sad, I'll be honest. It's funny, like when you're there in the heart with all the tourists and you think, oh, I'm trying to get somewhere, you get frustrated as someone that lives here. But then going there, and it was almost like a ghost town, you realize that the people are as much a part of what makes the city as the city itself.
Yeah.
So it was quite sad. That's right in the city, you know, in the heart of the city, as I say. Instead, today I was actually getting stretcher bars, and it was not quite so far in the center, and it's fair, like now it's fairly normal, but again, I don't know how long it's going to last like that. Yeah. So we'll see. I know the museums are quieter, not that I've had time to go and make the most of that, but I know my students have, which is good.
Yeah. So is Florence Academy, is everyone there?
Yeah, everyone's there, and it's really doing very well.
That's good. Oops.
Whole group, and I've just ended one workshop and started another one on Monday. But it is going well. It's very nice to have that and to be a part of it.
Good. All right. Well, listen, I think we should wind it up. Thank you, Melissa. Big hug
Thank
to
you.
the children and Ramiro.
Oh, thank you. The same to you both.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah, sounds good, Laura.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Yeah, so I think we're going to get started. What I want to say to everybody is that we're going to be recording this, and we will be cutting it up and putting it out for anybody who can attend. I know that there's we did a couple Zoom openings in the spring, and they were very, very successful. So my plan is to this winter, when I think things will be much quieter, because I think we're going to be heading into a pretty serious lockdown here in the States. We are going to be innovating and doing what we can. Actually, I just talked to Patty Watwood, and she'll be on later, and she said most of the galleries aren't doing what we're doing, which is we're really pushing hard in Instagram, and we're recording a lot. And I like Peter Trippi nodding. He knows better than most, but anyhow, it worked very well for us during the onslaught during the second quarter, March, April, May, or April, May, June. We didn't let anyone in the gallery, and business was great. So whatever what I would like to do is thank everybody for showing up. And I just want to have a few quick words about Compte Rendu, and just remind everyone there's a lot of artists that are going to be here. And so everybody gets 5 to 7 minutes. And Compte Rendu was actually Megan's idea, and it is Report to the King. And as Peter would know, the classical realist movement isn't known for its political activism. And I couldn't help myself this year. the events of the year have been so reverberating so much all day long. I don't think we can be alone in our studio painting beautiful paintings without responding to what's going on in the world around us. And if we remember, you know, classical realism and painting true to nature was actually an important thing before we had all these other forms of media. In fact, it was film and it was broadcast back in the day, certainly in the Renaissance. And the big innovation back then was the printing press. But so visual medium is very powerful, and I don't see why we shouldn't, especially if we have strong feelings or we're having a very big experience, which is the case for most of these painters. We shouldn't be using our ability to convey that visually. And that's what this show is about. And I think who am I going to start with? Leo. Okay, so Leo Mancini. We're going to start with Leo because Leo did a painting that we just thought couldn't be missed in a show where we're trying to talk about the events of the year. This is, I don't know if Leo, if you want to talk about this, but this is a painting that Leo did of the interior of Mar-a-Lago in Florida when he was down there with me. He was staying with me. He and Ben Fenske were working on, they were painting. And Leo, do you want to tell us a little more about how you were inside of Mar-a-Lago painting and what happened?
Gladly. I mean, it's a pretty funny story. And I've kept this painting kind of, I mean, I think there's a couple images of it online, but I haven't really shown it for years because, you know, I don't really want to stick my, you know, thumb into anything like overtly political, but this is just like, it's a crazy coincidence the way that this painting happened. Me and my friend Ben Fenske are painting, and Laura had rented a place for us to paint and stay at. And it just so happened I had another friend and mutual student there who I called, and I was like, hey, I hear you're down there too. Should I say who the student was? Is that fun, Laura?
Absolutely.
So it was Tony Bennett, the singer, which is like a totally, like, he's an amazing guy, and he's a genuine painter and a genuine artist. And although like there's decades in between us, we always had like this amazing time painting together. And I called him and I said, I see you're in Florida on tour. Would you like to meet and paint somewhere? And he says, yeah, no, let's meet and paint. Let's meet and paint at Barnes and Noble, which is a bookshop. And I thought that was weird, but you know, artist types are quirky. And I figured like, maybe Tony has a book signing. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just gonna hang out in the background. So I hang up the phone and he calls back and he goes, sorry, Barnes and Noble isn't home. So we'll have to paint somewhere else. And I quickly realize he means the man that owns Barnes and Noble, who's a friend of his. So that makes way more sense. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine. And my friend Ben's kind of looking at me like, come on, we have to go paint. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, okay, well, why don't we just paint where you're staying? And he says, we're staying at a place called the Mar-a-Lago. And I said, the what? And I've never heard of it. I've never heard of it at this point in time. Anyway, we say, sure, yeah, what's that? Okay, so from the sea to the lagoon, where is it? I look at the GPS, it's 10 minutes away. We drive down the road and me and Ben are dressed as artists, as we normally do with our box easels. And we show up at this place with like guards. It's you know, like a step above the Four Seasons or something. And they come open the car door and they ask, who can we help you see today? And they look at us and I said, we're here to see Tony Bennett. And they sort of walk away and come back and they say, right here, sir. And would you like us to carry your easel for you? And so we go and we walk around. And as Tony had told me on the phone, he's like, you know, the place is pretty nice. Like some aspects are a bit garish. And it's funny, he says, you know, some of it's has nice taste, but some of it's a little over the top. I don't know if you're gonna want to paint it. So we go back to where Tony's staying, and there's sort of a golf course, and we're not gonna paint a golf course. And I said, let's just paint in this main hall. It's amazing, actually. It looks like a Venetian villa. And the main hall of the Mar-a-Lago is essentially the way it was designed, I guess. And it is actually very tasteful and beautiful. So we sit down, and the three of us are sitting in a row and start painting. And there is a constant stream from, if you see it at the doorway, which is totally the small doorway off in the distance there, there's sort of a desk, and there's men in suits. Can you point at that, Laura? Like the little doorway under the arch? Yeah, that one right there. So that's where the sort of security desk is. And as every security person comes back for their shift, they march angrily down that hallway towards me, and they say, excuse me, what are you? Oh, hello, Mr. Bennett. How are you today? And it happens like again and again and again. It's hilarious. Anyway, me, Ben, and our friend Tony are just painting and having the time of our life. And we're chatting, and it's such a cool space. And I know I'm only gonna get a day, so I'm painting frantically and not really paying attention to the security coming towards me. And then all of a sudden I look back, and there's this little boy watching me. And I look at this little, and I have like a policy when I'm out painting, because I do almost everything on site. And I'm very good at staying concentrated. But when when a kid's watching me, I figure that might be a formative experience. I'm always very polite. I always like, hey, how are you? How you doing? So this little boy is sitting there watching us paint. I say hi, he doesn't say much. Look back 10 minutes later, he's still there. And I asked him, I said, do you like to paint? And he says, oh yeah, I like to copy. And he starts talking to his nanny, and they're speaking some Eastern European language I don't recognize. But I'm sort of painting for a while, and the little boy says, I'm gonna go get you something, because you like to copy too. And he leaves, and then the painting keeps developing. And the cook, this is like the main hall, the cook comes over, this Jamaican cook, and says, just so you know, that's Mr. Trump's son. And I'm like, oh. And it's like all sort of coming down on me. I'm like, okay, all right, I see what's happening here. So anyway, we paint in the main hall of the Mar-a-Lago for another hour or two, right? And this little boy all of a sudden reappears back over my shoulder. And he hands me, Ben, and Tony, he hands us each a like really meticulously done drawing of an airplane. And yeah, he told me that actually. It said, I like to draw airplanes. And I thought like, oh yeah, sure, airplanes. That's 8, you're 7. Anyway, he brings each of us an airplane, and signed at the top was Baron. Like really nice. And I had this amazing exchange with the little boy, and then we went and had lunch. And me and Ben we threw ours in a portfolio. Actually, it hung on my fridge in my house for a couple of years because I didn't have kids at that point, so I thought it was cute. And then the whole political thing happened. I thought, well, I'll put this away just in case. So I still have them around somewhere.
Great story, Leo.
But hold on, there's a punchline, which is we're sitting there, and Tony says, let's have lunch. And I said, great, let's go have lunch. We sit down at the table. We have a fabulous lunch, cooked by the same chef that had told me who the little boy was. And whatever it is, 4 years later, in January of 2017, I think, there's this front page news article about how the Mar-a-Lago with the Japanese premier, I forget who it was, but the nuclear football came out.
Yep.
A location which was not the White House for the first time, and it's this huge thing. And I looked at the article, I go, oh my God, that's my lunch table.
Oh my
It's
God.
literally the table that me, Ben, and Tony sat at having lunch.
Oh, that's incredible. And you still have that picture?
Yeah, I have two of them. I have 2 of them.
Oh, well, we might flash it up on the screen just so people.
Yeah, I'll send it to you again.
It's pretty promising from an artistic perspective. I remember it was on our fridge in Florida.
Yeah, no, and it lived
Right?
on my fridge in the studio for years after too. And then eventually I was like, I'll just put these away. But yeah, I mean,
Save them,
for a
you know.
7-year-old,
Yeah.
pretty prodigious, I thought.
Yeah. And does anybody have any questions for Leo?
So did you complete that on site or did you work on it when you got back to another studio?
I do like, so I have the 90-10 rule. So 90% of my work is done on site. 10% I finish in the studio, but
Right.
the 10% takes 90% of the time.
Really?
So it's an inverse. It goes 90-10 and then it goes 90-10 the other way. So I did, that is a 1-day painting on site, which I then sort of tinkered with a little in the studio.
Yep.
I've tried all different ways of sort of doing it, but what works best for me is if I get onto location, if I find something that's really interesting, I get the most amount of, the most impression down, whatever it is on that day. And then later I can sort of think about what I might take out, what I might put in, what I might adjust.
Well, yeah. And what I want to say about this painting, because I do remember when you came back that day, what I see now, I can look at it in the screen. The fact that there's 2 sources, actually 3 sources of light, the unnatural light, the light coming through from there, and then this light. But in this little screen, I see how you kind of modulated it as it cascades into the room. And I don't think I saw that when you first brought it into the house in Florida. Like, I don't know if that's what you did, but I'm guessing that you got your values, you were able to stand back and adjust the values so that they read properly.
Yeah, like I said, it's a 90-10 thing. It's like mostly there, but somehow it's not mostly there.
Yeah.
I typically will look at something and I think, well, it's okay, it's all right, and then later my impression of it might be different. So in that case, I probably spent another couple days on it, but those couple days may have been removed from each other by weeks to try to improve the paint.
And one of those things is when you get further away, I don't know if you can see it in my screen, it sharpens up, and that's the reality of a good impressionist painting. So we have to keep moving along because we've got a lot of painters here. We're going to talk about Adam's work, right? So Adam Straus, thank you, Leo, very much. Adam Straus we're very lucky to have his work here. And Adam, I don't know if you know this, but 3 or 4 of your clients from New York City have been stopping in.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can.
Everybody's
hopefully the
out there.
camera will
Nobody's in the
adjust.
city.
What's that?
Everybody's out there. Nobody's in the city.
Yeah, so New York actually moved out here. Kristy's and Sotheby's both joined. Let's see, that's a little bit of a strange screen, but anyhow, now that's my spooky October look. Anyhow, what's that? Yeah, so I'm gonna, let's see. I see I'm leaning in. So that's the painting in the window. If I pop outside, I'll be in the middle of a hurricane, so I'm not gonna go outside. This is called Fire and Earth. As I mentioned, it's an exquisitely painted, an executed painting. And I don't know, let's see if we can do this, but down below, you can see like kind of crackled dry earth, and up above is a wildfire. See, it's a little bit of strange light. And it's a diptych that's in one handmade zinc frame.
Oh, lead.
Sorry, lead. I don't know why I always say zinc. And then here's the other painting, which I think is great. It's called Old News Yosemite. This is a very grand image. It's a perennial blooming valley in Yosemite on top of American headlines. I think this was from 2015 and 2016, New York Times headlines, which is what I've been saying. And Adam, I'd like you to chime in now, is that this is, and you can see the scale of this painting. It's absolutely gorgeous. It is about the fact that nature versus man, nature trumps. And no pun intended.
Yeah.
Man's headlines are very thin.
We can only hope.
Yeah. Man's headlines are nothing compared to nature's perennial ability.
Yeah, well, that says it very well. I started painting on surfaces of newspaper right after the election in 2016, like literally 4 years ago this month. And it was a desire to acknowledge the news, but at the same time, escape from it, like provide some kind of escape over it. And so I would glue down newspaper. I would transfer it onto canvas with acrylic medium, and then scrape the paper off so the ink reversed onto the canvas. So I had a whole layer of information there before I even started painting. And then I would let elements of it come through depending on what I was painting. And a lot of it happened by chance. I mean, in this one and specifically, there's a missile from an article about North Korea. And this was the time, at the time when, when Trump and Kim, North Korea were kind of insulting each other into possible nuclear war, So I kind of left that coming through this classic image of Yosemite. So it's really about that classic landscape over, and the just incredible natural beauty of some of those places over our day-to-day absurdity, really. I mean, tragedy, absurdity. I mean, if you think about the newspaper and the news, it's pretty much anthropocentric. It's like, it's about us. There's articles about the environment and nature and stuff like that, but primarily it's about our follies, our tragedies, our triumphs, our comedy, our absurdity. It's about us. So I wanted to contrast that with nature. And I really firmly believe that nature will, once we're gone, it's gonna just celebrate, I mean, it's gonna party,
Yeah.
There's a great book I read a number of years ago called The World Without Us. And it's about what would happen if all of a sudden humans were beamed off the planet, and not killed, not massacred, just like zip, beamed off the planet. And it's incredibly well researched. It's science, it's real science about what would happen. And it starts off in Manhattan. And it turns out that all the streams that were running through Manhattan back when nobody had it, back when the Native Americans were on it, are still running through Manhattan. They're pumped out of the subways, they're pumped out of the tunnels constantly. When it rains, the rain fills up then there, that's pumped out. So immediately you would have that just end and everything starts caving in, stuff would start growing out of the sidewalks, the, Central Park would
Well, it's like that movie, I Am Legend, that dystopic, like post-apocalyptic movie where Will Smith is running around New York and there's tumbleweeds.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, watch it.
So the painting of Fire and Earth, when was that made? I think I have the date on the back here.
That's earlier. That's 2008. That's quite a while ago. And that was more, I mean, I oscillate over the years. I fluctuate between doing paintings that I simply want to be kind of really beautiful and kind of escapist. Fire and Earth is not one, but Fire and Earth comes from a group of paintings of air and water. It was, they were centered around elements, the primitive elements. And I did a lot of paintings that were joined in that way, two canvases on a horizon line, one of them atmosphere, one of them water. And those were meant to be very peaceful. They were also framed in lead. So you had that toxic, heavy element around them, but they were meant to be peaceful and escapist. Fire and Earth, on the other hand, was really kind of about the desertification of a lot of places like China. Even the US is suffering from these extreme droughts, and areas because of deforestation and the drought are becoming desert.
Yeah.
And interesting, the Sahara actually was a blooming kind of green place at one point.
Yeah. I remember reading about that.
Yeah, because of climate fluctuations and also because of our presence.
Yeah.
It became desert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. Adam, I really appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for Adam?
So I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm curious, you're saying that the frames are lead, and so are they, do you have them like welded? Is it like sheet? Obviously that's really heavy. So I'm just,
Well,
you know,
no, actually it's fairly heavy, but it's wood. The frames are wood and they're covered with a sheet lead.
okay.
The lead that they're covered with is very thin. It's about a 1/16 of an inch thick. And it's fairly light. It does, I mean, the big paintings, it adds up and they get fairly heavy, but it's not nearly as heavy as if it would have been solid lead. I mean, solid lead.
Like a metaphor, like what's important to you about that choice? The visual quality of it, or sort of the
I love
lead, or
yeah, I love the tone of it. I started using it when I was a sculptor years ago in the 80s. And actually, I got the idea, I fell in love with it. Terry Allen, I don't know if you know of the artist Terry Allen. He's a Texas artist. He did a number of things with lead. A lot of people have used lead. Richard Serra used lead, Robert Morris. There's been a lot of lead in art. You know, I started using it in sculpture and I just loved the tone of it. It worked really well with my palette, with the materials I was using, but I also liked the fact that it was a very contradictory material because it would protect you from radiation, but it could poison you at the same time. So I found that I thought that kind of metaphor was interesting, and it was kind of my feeling about technology in general, that it can be wonderful and also toxic and poisonous, or about really 21st century living, you know. It just so I've used it a lot on and off for years.
And I have to say, it's a beautiful, it's got, you know, we're always looking for interesting framing ideas. And it's got a beautiful, I don't know if you put wax on top, but it's got a very matte kind of gray, it's very chic. And it is heavy, but it is, I don't know, I was trying to show you guys how it was all put on. And I'm happy to send any artists pictures of the way it was constructed.
But it isn't welded, it's actually tacked together. And
yeah, I was showing that, trying to show. Leo, did you have a question?
the welding is very toxic, actually. The burning of it is very toxic, the fumes.
So I have a related question, which is, have you developed any lead carbonate on the outside of your frames? You could just scrape off a little from time.
Yes, sometimes it does, depending on the humidity and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, that's why we try to wax it. Waxing it protects it. And if it's in a fairly dry place, it's pretty good. If it's in a very hot, humid place, it tends to develop the oxide, you know.
Yeah, it's chemically, it's the same as the old time pigment that people still use today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Frames developed it.
I think they used to put cow manure on it to really oxidize it.
That's, cow manure factors into one of the oxidation processes. That's pretty cool.
Great. Well, listen, thank you, Adam, very much. We're going to move over to, it's Emily's turn. Oh, yeah. So when we hung the Fire and Earth out front, which we will get a better version when we post this video, we actually had wildfires burning in California. And right before he left, Ben Fenske was here. And as I mentioned to Ben, I don't know if you can see this about Ben, Ben is almost agnostic on subject matter, certainly on politics from what I can gather. However, every painting that he makes is motivated by a light effect that caught his interest and attention. And there were 2 days at the end of, beginning of September, when I was driving home and I'm like, wait, what's that? It looked like the moon was rising, but it was the sun setting. And the reason it was so strange was because the wildfires in California, the smoke, there was some kind of inversion, and the smoke had come all the way across America, over 3,000 miles, and had blotted out our sunsets 2 days in a row. And Ben was able to get down and make a pretty major painting. This is called Long Beach Fishing Nets. And it was a bizarre, it looks like all the colors of a moonrise, but not really. I mean, it's just strange. It was a very strange thing. And this painting is at the back of the gallery, and Adam Straus's painting of Fire and Earth is at the front of the gallery. Let me get back here a little so you can see it. And so that is one of those things that's happening in fine painting right now, is as the environment changes, the artists are total students of nature, and they know what a sunset, Ben certainly knows what a sunset at Long Beach looks like. So I'm not surprised that he grabbed his biggest canvas and ran down there and made this painting, because it was a very bizarre twist of nature responding. While we're here, I want to reintroduce, where are you? Oh, Emily, there's Emily. Emily Persson is here from Australia. She zoomed in from Australia. We actually, here's Megan. Megan discovered her. We just love her work. She is painting Australian landscapes, which you have on your screen too. They're right behind us. And I don't know if you want to share the little twist of who's interested in your work, but Emily, do you want to share with us what motivates you to paint out of doors in Australia?
Everything. I love the diversity of Australia. I grew up in a very drought-stricken area, and I've moved down to a very lush green city now. So I just think that we have a lot to show. I think that a lot of people don't know overseas, especially, of these places that I'm painting in Australia that are absolutely stunning. That's like a classical Australian landscape. If all was good and well and we had a fair bit of rain and the dams were full, that's what it would look like. Unfortunately, most of the time it's a lot browner than that, and the dams are empty. But my real passion is I spent a lot of time in the landscape. I camped a lot growing up. So it is a very safe space for me. And I think that's why I painted. It just reminds me of why I'm here, what I love, and it is my true passion, the landscape. I just think it's absolutely beautiful. We've got big skies, we've got the most beautiful clouds, and that's what I try to capture in my work.
So Emily, let me, what's very interesting now that you're talking about how you're looking for the lushness, or you're almost amping up the lushness in your painting. What I want to point out, and I don't know if you mind, I'm going to touch your paintings, try to show you on the edge. There is such impasto here. We don't really often see the combination of your really, really thick painting technique, plus the excellent sense of value and tone and color. A lot of people who like painting in impasto are a little less sensitive to value shifts and color shifts. And so I think it's kind of, you can't see this. The sky is like palette knife on. Can you see that?
I learned a lot from my great aunt, who is a tonalist painter. So looking at her paintings growing up, I really loved that contrast and that value that she used in her paintings. So that's what I brought forward into my work. I guess is directly from her. And also my Nana does the same thing. Like, we all paint with the same type of palette and value, and that's very important in our paintings. So I think that's why my paintings have gone that way as well. I think that that makes a beautiful painting. And that's very important in my work, is the value and the depth and getting it all right. How I see it, I guess.
Can I ask, are you doing it in one shot, or do you go back over? I mean, are you perseverating on it?
No, it's all in one sitting. So sometimes I can paint for 12 hours a day, which is quite exhausting. Big works, I will get up at 6 a.m. and I won't go to sleep until about 3 a.m. the next morning. Because when you go over it again, it kind of gets not that smoothness. You get the paint starts to get a skin on it, especially in Australia, it dries a little bit quicker on top. So I just love to get it all done in kind of the one sitting, so that it does have that smoothness that I like about it. I don't really like it to, I don't know, not be, I guess I emulate like a brush with my knife. I don't want it to have that chunky paint coming off of it that's dried and it's a bit weird. I don't like it. I just love that smoothness.
Yeah.
And that chunk coming off. And once those chunks have that skin, it's impossible to rework.
So you have to just keep going until you're finished.
You have to keep going. And I scrape a lot of paintings back if they're not good at the end of the day. And I try again. But these works have been a little bit different. With the detail on the Save Western Port piece, I was able to just add a couple of details later on. So that's a bit of a change in my work, that little bit of detail. So I've been able to come back to that and touch up a little bit, which has been really wonderful. It's been to kind of have that space to look at it and then come back and go, oh, it needs something here, or this needs to stand out a little bit more here.
Well, that's just really wonderful. You have to come and see these paintings, and should we talk about, well, the person who's interested in that?
No, it has to be discreet.
Yeah, okay, so never mind. We will be very discreet on that, but there's a lot of interest, and I understand, Emily, that there's a lot of demand for your work in Australia now too.
Yes. I've had a few of my favorite people, my favorite female journalists, purchase work, and it's been really wonderful here in Australia. The collectors coming out and supporting me, so it's been really wonderful.
Well, that's great. So just keep them coming. Okay.
I won't ever stop painting.
Oh wait, Leo, do you have a question?
I do.
Are you just saying goodbye?
I do. Sorry, I wanted to say, Emily, it's nice to meet you. And I think Australia has always been like this incredibly inspiring destination because of painters like Tom Roberts and Arthur Streeton. For those of us that are called to painting outdoors, it's just per capita, it had this like amazing sort of renaissance of painters that, I don't know. Anyway, nice to meet you. That's all.
Nice to meet you. Tom Roberts is one of my favorite, and Arthur Streeton is a huge favorite of mine. Frederick McCubbin is also incredible, and he used a little bit of palette knife as well with his work, and that's one of my main sources of inspiration as well. But they live where I live. They live in actually the same suburb as I live, Frederick McCubbin. And that's when I moved down here. I was so excited because I went and found all of their spots. I was taking photos, just living in it. It was just so wonderful just to be where they were.
Well, that's great. And Emily, she said earlier, for anybody who's new, that they're just coming out of a 111-day lockdown. So you're going to be probably 6 or 9 months ahead of us. I think we're probably heading into that here. But anyhow, we want to move on. I see Scott Bluedorn is here. Scott, hi Scott. So Scott Bluedorn is the only East End born and raised artist in this show. He has some really interesting work and it's selling well. I'm going to turn around here. Let's see. We're standing right next to his work. You know, along the lines of this idea of being sensitive to the environment, in addition to looking at the environment, Scott Bluedorn is created a series of works that remind us scrimshaw, which Sag Harbor was kind of famous for.
Yeah.
But what he's doing is, I don't know, you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing there, Scott?
Yeah, so thank you. Yes, they kind of do reference scrimshaw, which if people who don't know what that is, it was actually scratching an image into whalebone, either, well, it could also be bones too, or any kind of ivory. And then you would rub ink into the scratched marks and it would leave essentially an image. And it was big on whaling voyages for the sailors. And then when they got home, they would sell them. So that's definitely a reference to what I'm doing here, but what I'm actually using is found fiberglass, found all from the beach. So I do a lot of beach combing, and all of these panels that you see are actually things that I found and did not alter in any way. So I think they're really cool that the ocean really shaped the panel or the canvas that I'm working on. And I found them really great surfaces to then do what I do, which is drawing. And these are ballpoint pen mostly, but also pencil drawings. Sometimes a little bit of white gouache, as in this one that's right, yeah, like that's in the camera. And I'm doing different landscapes that I'm kind of, well, that was actually from a residency on Cuttyhunk Island in Massachusetts. These two actually, that's kind of, I might have actually started doing them there now that I think about it. This is another kind of local little harbor scene. There's a lot of very romantic kind of ruins there that are remnants of old fishing docks. That's why you see the chain and probably part of a dock there with that pole sticking up. And then others, here's another landscape also. That's also Cuttyhunk Island. So I got to do a really great residency there that I encourage any of you who are looking now to do. It's somewhat of a new residency, but it's a really great one. A really amazing painter named Tamerlan Baumgarten started it, and she's also an amazing oil landscape painter. And this top one.
Yeah, Scott, what's going on with this one? Again, one of the themes that I'm seeing is that some of the artists are really kind of just doing a little bit more experimental stuff right now.
Yeah, this is definitely a departure from the others that I took in an existing landscape in a way. This is more of an active landscape with like a peaking wave here. And I was looking at geodesic domes, which I like. I'm a big kind of student of architecture and design. And this is actually even kind of like an alien craft of some kind is kind of what I see it as. Maybe shooting some kind of a beam into the ocean, creating this wave. It's kind of, I mean, it's really a study of surrealism, which I'm also a big fan of all of the surrealists' work, and also magic realism. And those are the kind of two things that I look at when I might combine something like this in a landscape. I'm not always looking directly from observation. I'll also, kind of add in surprise elements like this that might be kind of like offsetting or surprising.
Well, Scott, what I want you to know, two things about this piece. First of all, it's the first thing to sell, I believe, in this whole show. There's a little red dot over there, see?
Yeah, cool.
We sold 2 of them. And also, we had a very experimental painting from Ben Fenske, which was a moon with these moon beams kind of gridded coming down. And it was like nothing I'd ever seen from him or from any of my painters, frankly.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of early Renaissance or pre-Renaissance church kind of painting, but whatever it was, it had the same kind of wave and the same kind of, it had this almost the same thing happening. It was
I'd
really
love to see that. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I think this did come partially from looking at a full moon over the ocean, and I'm trying to actually remember what that inspiration was, and that might have been kind of it. And then I thought, if it's not a moon, if it was some kind of a craft, right? I'd like to see that.
Ben's painting was from a full moon. It was a little sketch that he had brought back from a full moon. It was actually called, what was it called? The Sturgeon Moon. The name of the painting is the Sturgeon Moon. And that was, I think, the last full moon in September or August last year. And he was stuck in his studio, and he just you know, I told him, look, we're looking for some larger paintings this year.
Mm-hmm.
He did a supersized version and it was very risky, but only in the time of COVID would an artist sit in a studio and create some giant thing that's experimental.
I agree. Yeah, I think I could totally identify with that.
Yeah, so I just thought that was cool. And this is a beautiful little one. This one is also sold. Actually, I'll tell you the story. One of your friends came in and almost bought it.
Yeah.
Did he tell you?
Oh yeah. Oh wait, so he did it or he didn't?
Well, he said put a red dot, and then he said, but does that mean I have to buy it? And I was like, well, if you put a red dot on it, then nobody else can buy it, and I can't hold it. And literally, right as I was opening the door, someone else came in and bought it the next morning.
Oh wow.
So he did not get it.
Oh man.
You may not know that.
That's funny. Maybe I'll have to make him. I don't know. Well,
tell him to come in and buy a different one.
Yeah, it's a different one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Scott, so much. We're really, I'm really pleased that you're part of the show, and visually, and we'll do a little walk around, but visually it really adds something so interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for having me be a part of this show, and I love showing in a new place too. So thank you.
Okay, great.
Great show.
Barking for a treat back there. Okay, so we have let's see, who else is here? We have Patty and Kristy, and who else?
They're both there. I don't know.
That's it. Who?
Steve Levin.
Is Steve here? Steve Levin? Steve, are you here? So we're gonna go down and just show you again. This is the Scott Bluedorn behind me, and then we have the Mar-a-Lago by Leo, and then we have two very gorgeous paintings. This one is Jamal in profile. This is from Patrick Byrnes, who cannot join us from France because he just found out that they're going into lockdown, and he was scurrying around for the last 5 hours of being able to be out. And this is the other painting, Keisha, in profile. And of course, only in the year 2020 would a portrait of an African-American be a political statement. Which actually, I think I'm gonna bring you right over to another very gorgeous portrait called Kashan. And this is by Kristy Gordon. And I must say, Kristy, are you here? Kristy?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Hi, Laura.
It's so good to see you.
Hi, it's so good to see all of you.
Yeah, and I have to say, Compte Rendu, this show called Report to the King, was really inspired by Kristy Gordon. And Kristy, we're very glad you're here, but I wanna, while I'm standing over here, I'm gonna quickly talk to Patty Watwood about her work. Yes. Because we wanna finish with Kristy's painting. So let me just see. Yes, here we have it. There it is. Do you see that? This is one of my absolute all-time favorite paintings, Patty. And I love telling the story, but now that you're here with us, I want you to tell us the story of where this painting came from.
Hi, everybody. It's really nice to see you. And of course, there's some friends here, hi, Peter. And hi, Kristy. Oh my God, Kristy went to my grad school, and I know some other people, so I'm excited to be here. Laura, thanks for having me. So I've painted a lot of, I mostly paint nudes and portraits, and I have painted a lot of women. And so just as a female artist, and I have a classical training, I have for a long time kind of had to sort of live in the territory of what does it mean to be a woman painting the female nude, thinking about beauty, right? And then looking back at art history, there's issues of objectification, or the woman as object. And so just as a lover of the nude and as a lover of the female nude, this is always just something that is present even still, as I'm thinking about the work that I make. So I've painted a lot of floras because I love that subject of showing women, and I've made more allegorical pieces where they're kind of representing beauty, representing fecundity, rebirth. But this image was inspired by a feminist movement called Femin. And this group Femin does protests. They're actually started in Europe by a Ukrainian, and then they've done protests in France, where they'll do political protests by painting, literally painting slogans on their bodies, and often doing marches where the only thing they are wearing is their underwear so that they're not arrested, and then wearing flower crowns. And so using beauty and using their bodies as a weapon of power. And I just I saw an image of this and I was like, hold up, I have to make a painting of this, because it very much spoke to my own feeling about that. I think that women's sexuality, that women's beauty is actually, it is a tool of power. It's really powerful. It's not just about like subjectification, it's like powerful. And so this, I was just kind of inspired by those images, and I was like, oh, I got to make that. And then of course, thinking about liberty leading the people. So the way she's designed is it kind of tips to, nods to liberty leading the people. And yeah,
there's like crowds in the background. And
right. So yeah. So it's very much, it's kind of, expressing my my feelings about, the future is female, or that I want a world that is truly equal. I want a world where women in art history, like they've been separated from their bodies. There's like women's sort of our intellect, and then there's the body, but the body is maybe sensual or even sinful, and that's a bad thing. And I'm like, I want all of it. I want the sensuality. I want the beauty. I want the intellect.
So interesting, Patty, because I haven't told this story very much lately, but when I was working on Wall Street in the 80s, late 80s in New York, we all wore business suits that made us look like men.
Right.
Buttoned up, puffy shoulders. And the last thing you ever want to do is cry at work. And you were, there was no feminine energy was really permitted when I first got there. But then I moved to Asia. And in Asia, the women, people don't realize this, but in Thailand, for example, in 1991, 50% of the boardroom slots were held by women. And the reason was most companies were owned by families. And guess what? 50% of your children are going to be women. So you send them off to get educated, and then they come back and they have a lot of power. And but the mini skirt and dressing like a beautiful woman was part of the culture in Asia for business women.
Yes.
And I remember I went back to the States, and I was marketing to clients in Boston, and you wouldn't believe like how eyebrow raising it was when I walked in with a mini skirt instead of the below, it was still below the knee in Boston back then.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's so, forget it. I'm telling you right now, Patty, I'm buying the painting. Now I know. I love this painting. It's been in my gallery several times, and I cannot let it go now. I just love it.
As women and as feminists for a long time, the model was, okay, just sort of try to make yourself as much like we're equal. So therefore be as much like a man as you can in order to try to compete in the world. But I think a new wave of feminism, and then hopefully people making art, it's like, no, don't tell me that I have to separate myself from my femininity, from the body, from sensuality in order to have true equality, in order to have power. True equality is being able to have both and to understand those things.
Well, you know what? It's funny. I call myself a latter-day feminist.
Right.
Because I'm like, bring feminine back into feminist. And why not? If that's what you need to do. I mean, it's a power. Don't ignore it.
Right.
So anyhow, I love this. What's that, Adam?
That was that was an idea of the more radical feminists, that it was the kind of liberal feminists that thought that making themselves more like men was actually feminism, where it kind of really wasn't. It was like something kind of screwy, like you instead of going against that kind of patriarchal society, you wanted to become part of it, So
well, I'm anxious to see more paintings from all of you that work along these lines, but we have to shift over unless anybody has any questions for Patty or Patty, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I'm excited to hear from Kristy too. And I know
Yeah, so Kristy,
time.
I don't know why, but I can't see Kristy. I'm trying to move you
I
around.
think if I talk, he'll hear me.
What's that?
Do you see me when I talk?
No, it's not that. There's some strange like camera thing going on my, but everyone else can see Kristy, right? You can see.
I can see all of you. I've got it on gallery view, so I can see everyone. But I guess.
Okay. So what I want to tell everybody is the paintings that I'm going to show you were done, and they created this show. We saw these in September and October last year, and Kristy is super sweet, very talented. But frankly, I hadn't seen the kind of angst and the kind of power in her work until this show. And I was like, wait, Kristy, like what's with the wildfires and the rioting? And she painted all of this over a year ago. And you know, Kristy, what you want to know is I tell clients this, and one of the clients said, yeah, well, what's she painting now? What's going to happen next year?
Well, well, that's, yeah.
So I want to show you guys this painting is what inspired the whole show. It's called A Daily Reprieve. And I don't know if you know, Kristy, it's sold.
I saw that. That's wonderful.
And this to me looks like what we went through in New York in April. And it was due to be shown April 1st. We had an opening the first week of April, and we had to move the show to this month because that was the one show that we did cancel.
Yeah, I know, it's so wild. Well, first, I just want to say how happy I am to be in this show. And it's like, I mean, we've worked together for quite a few years now, and it's so great that as my work's evolving, like it continues to, you know, like you really get it, and that like means so much to me. And yeah, I mean, a lot of my work does seem to be, I mean, even before the whole pandemic, there was a lot of like strife going on, like after the election and stuff, and so I guess I've been feeling like this like struggle that's kind of going on like collectively for some time, and that was like filtering into my work, and actually even before that, like a lot of you know my work, you know, I painted that explosion years and years ago, so there's always been that like element of like death and rebirth, you know, binary oppositions, like you can't have one without the other, and then the chiaroscuro sort of effect building into the technical aspect of that, the light and darkness, you know, in the technical aspect. So yeah, there's lots of images of like struggle, but then also like the resilience of people like struggling but helping each other through life, and I find that really touching and tender, and you know, that's like a real part of my life, so that means a lot to me. Yeah, and then like the environmental, like, you know, aspect, like the fires. Yeah, it is interesting. I painted that painting right behind your head there.
Yeah,
a long time before the wildfires started. So it is, and you know, I feel like there's like, this is a time where we're having like some kind of great pause like going on in the whole world, and we're like kind of coming back to Mother Earth, and like pollution rates are dropping, and I just feel like kind of in line with what Patty was talking about, like this reconnection with the feminine, reconnection with Mother Earth. There's sort of, it's like we have to integrate all the parts. I don't know, that's kind of what's going on in my head in like a deeper level right now. And I think as far as like what my work will, you know, it's like last year my work was all the struggle, which, you know, a lot of struggle. And then I think it's starting to come to a place, there'll still be struggle. I think there's always like that going on, but a place of a bit of integration and a bit of like, yeah, just like reconnecting back to the earth. I mean, in Canada, where I am right now, there's like, you know, like reconciliation trying to happen with Indigenous people. And we're like in such a polarized time, you know, right now, that we just need to like integrate all these parts. So I don't know, on a big wide scale, that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, so I mean, somebody pointed out to me that could have been like the murder hornets that are here.
I know, it's so weird. I don't know.
How did you know?
Before that, I didn't know. It's weird. I don't
People
know.
were just like, holy moly. And then, you know, you got the wildfire, and then there's like people, I don't know if you guys can see, they're rioting. And this looks to me like a riot. I saw that happening. You know, like people like beating on people that were protesting. And then you have a child with a gun. You know, and somebody said, oh, I didn't see a baby with a gun. Well, the 17-year-old in Wisconsin, he was a baby. Okay. And then you have an African-American or, you know, somebody of African descent, like in a warrior position on the horse. What was that? What, you know, this is called Candyland, by the way.
Yeah, and people always want me to talk more specifically about what each specific element means, but I want to kind of like capture more of a mood, a bit more like ambiguous, and I'm not like painting like a specific historical event. So even like my current work that I'm working on right now, it touches on the different movements, but I don't want it to be a specific like historical event, more broad, you know. So so everything's like more of a mood, sort of capturing like a sweeping. And I'm always like, I like, you know, diversity in the groups of people that are portrayed, and I am like especially careful about what roles I give each person as far as that goes. So yeah, there's like a lot of consideration about what each element says, but it's normally more at a feeling sense than putting it into specific words, what each thing sort of means.
Well, thank you, Kristy.
Thanks.
I'm just really, I can't wait to see what you're working on now. And I'm very, very, does anybody have any questions for Kristy?
Oh, actually, could you say a few words just about what the painting that you're standing in front of? That just looks totally gorgeous.
This one right behind me here?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so this one, again, there's the kind of binary oppositions happening, like, you know, light and darkness, and then there's like kind of a battle scene, you know, going on behind me. Oh, there's also a lot of the time like sort of a mystical creature, like, oh wait, it's on this side of me. Yeah, different like hybrid creatures or mystical creatures, almost as if there's like another sort of like entities that are watching us, that are maybe helping us unbeknownst to us, happening in the background.
It's really stunning.
Thank you so much.
I just want to say, can you hear me? I don't know, Kristy, like I've now followed your work for a long, long time. And I know like, you know, for a long time you were doing things that feel more anchored in like realism. And then in the last several years, you've like embarked with such freedom into this like universe of just like invention and imagination and like fantasy and construction. And it's especially just as watching as you've been doing it, and just like it's getting like richer and richer and more personal and more complex. I'm just like really, I think your work is just, I've always thought you were really amazing, and I think your work, you're just like off the hook. So I just really great, Kristy.
Nice to hear. Thank you so much, Patty. That's really great to hear. I'm glad you like it.
Well, it's great. Thank you, Kristy, for zooming in. And I'm really happy it looks to me like Stephen Levin's joining us.
Hello.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, how are you?
You're in Minneapolis, right?
I am. Well, Stillwater. I moved from Minneapolis. I'm in Stillwater, which is about a half hour straight east of Minneapolis.
Well, Stillwater sounds like a really good town for a painter to paint in.
It's gorgeous. It's a little town, and it's sort of a little tourist destination for people in Minnesota. Everybody, when we move to Stillwater, they say, "Oh, wow, that's great." Everybody loves it.
Cool. Well, we have 3 paintings by Stephen Levin, and one of the reasons I invited him into this show is because he had these 3 paintings that connoted to me like the little soft, peaceful spot during this COVID time. There's 2 interiors of museums. I'm going to show you the one that's right here. Let's see. Can you see that? I just love this painting. It's the Met Museum Impressionist Room. And the like just the respite that I get when I look at it is unbounded.
Good.
Yeah. And so when did you start doing these interiors of the museums?
I think it was about 2000 or 2001. And I was, intrigued by the idea of the people looking at the paintings becoming the subject of the painting.
Oh, yeah.
When you're going around the gallery, people, they get in all these interesting poses that they just sort of compose themselves. And I enjoy, especially when I'm doing one of the other paintings you have there, that has a lot more figures in it. It's sort of fun just to capture all the different attitudes. And as you look at the painting, I think you kind of imagine yourself getting into those, the different postures, you know, as you're in a museum and you're experiencing the painting, you sort of forget yourself. And it's sort of fun to see what sort of poses people get in and that give you a clue as to what they're thinking. So this painting you're showing now is the National Gallery in London. And it's an enormous room. I don't know if any of you have been there. I'm sure some of you have. And it's the room that has the constables and the Turners. And this view that I've done is from about the halfway point. So
Oh, wow. I have been in
get a
that.
sense of scale. It's just enormous. And so when you walk in, it kind of takes your breath away. And you can see on the far wall, there's a constable on the left, the Hayway, in one of his most famous paintings, and then one of Turner's most famous paintings on the right. And there's sort of this dueling moods where the constable on the left is this really pastoral, peaceful, beautiful view. He did a lot of them in Eastern England of a mill and some water. And then the Turner is one of his examples of the really stormy sea. I think that's Dutch Boats in a Gale is the title of that one. So it's a completely different sort of mood. And so it sort of sets the tone for the whole room because you've got all sorts of different painters in there and all sorts of different moods captured. I just love that particular room.
I think that the one of the coolest things about this painting is the light, the way that the value shifts are so perfect, you know, and the reflected light on the floor. And then the fact that there's more light in the farthest distance, like out in this room, is brighter. And usually when you do an interior, the further you get from the viewer, the darker it gets. And that kind of glowing light is just amazing.
Oh, thanks. Well, I wanted to make sure that you went all the way into the room to give that sense of space. And then you get a sense of the next room being completely different. You know, it's got different color on the wall and it's brighter and an entirely different mood. So the first painting that you showed, which was of the Met Impressionist room, that's a very different sort of situation than what's here. Every once in a while, when you're in a museum, you get an entire room to yourself, maybe just for a minute. And I don't know, I just love that feeling when you feel like you've got all the paintings to yourself and there's no one else there. And it's this wonderful sense of quiet.
And I guess that is like, it's a great note for us to finish on. And this is the painting. This painting is sold. It is such a gorgeous painting. Again, it's a tonal, it's just a very contemporary image. To me, this captures what COVID, you know, the hardcore COVID shutdown was like. And I know you didn't paint this during the COVID time. It's from 2018. But to me, this painting just, it is like that. You're somehow in your narrative and your choice of compositions, you're able to evoke that calm feeling that you just mentioned.
Thanks.
I don't know how you do it. It's magic to me. It's like, but it really, you are hitting the note.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was trying to capture that really, really early morning mood where there's just the barest bit of light coming in the window. You can see light. Doesn't really translate in the video as well. But the light on the sheet on the right-hand side of the painting is very blue. And on the left-hand side of the painting, it's very warm light as she's looking at her phone. It's called 6 a.m. News.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. Does anybody have any questions for Stephen? Okay, well, I'm just so delighted to have everyone here. And is there anybody out there that has any other questions? Okay, so I just want to give you guys a quick walk around again. You can see, here's the gallery.
Laura, how long is the show up in the gallery?
So through November 8th right now, assuming we're not in a civil war next week.
Yeah, yeah. And you guys are open Thursday through Monday? Is that?
We're open every day except for Tuesday and Wednesday, but we're around.
okay.
I'm not really traveling like I used to. So if anybody wants to come in on a Tuesday or Wednesday, they just need to text or email.
Yeah, no, I stopped by last Wednesday and I realized, oh my God, you know, that I was in East Hampton anyway, but
Okay.
oh, Wednesday's the day they close. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and we did do, just to let everyone know, we do have paintings by Melissa Franklin Sanchez, and we did an earlier Zoom with her because she's got little kids and she had to go to sleep. She's in Italy, but that'll be spliced in, and this will be available on Instagram and YouTube. And I can't tell all of you guys how much I appreciate that you put your heart out there and you're making paintings. You just keep making paintings no matter what's going on in the world. And I just want to tell you to keep on going.
It was nice meeting you guys. It's nice.
Great to see you. Congratulations.
Nice to see you all.
Thanks
Great
so
show.
much, Laura. It's really great to connect, and it's great to have an opportunity to see my other artists.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Hi, Megan. Hi, Laura.
Bye-bye.
So now what do I do?